Okay, so get this, right? Like, what if, just poof, out of nowhere, everything stopped?
Oh, wow.
Because something huge happened, like a total game changer.
Mm.
You ever think of, I mean, how different our lives would be if we knew that was even a possibility?
It's wild, yeah. You did definitely look at things differently, for sure.
Exactly. And that's actually what we're going to be digging into today.
Okay.
A listener sent us this episode of a podcast. It's called The Sun Inside.
Mm-hmm.
And the title just grabs you. It's like, if Christ came back today, are you ready?
Oh, wow.
Heavy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know, for some people it might seem a bit out there, but
So,
it really dives into some fascinating ideas about how we live our lives, no matter what you believe.
I think it's something that we can all think about, yeah.
Yeah. And it starts with this quote, is it from James 5:8. It says, "Be patient you also, and establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand." Now, this was written thousands of years ago, but that sense of urgency, I don't know, it's kind of mind-blowing.
It's like, are you living each day to the fullest,
Makes you think, right?
Yeah,
About how you're spending your time, today even.
absolutely.
Now, this is where things get even more interesting. The episode, it talks about, it's from Matthew 7:22-23, this idea that it's not enough to just talk the talk, You got to walk the walk. It basically says, not everyone who says, "Lord, Lord," will actually enter the kingdom of heaven.
It's about being genuine, not just, in a religious sense, but in every aspect of life.
Totally. We all know when someone's not being real, right?
Oh, yeah, you can totally sense it.
So how do we apply that to our own lives, I wonder? Like, what are we doing that's maybe just going through the motions, not really being, present?
Well, I think it's about asking yourself, are there places where you're more worried about how things look rather than, the actual substance? Or maybe you're saying yes to things when you really want to say no. Those are kind of signs.
Ooh, yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, are you on autopilot instead of really living authentically?
And to show just how powerful standing up for your beliefs can be, even when it's tough, they bring up the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Oh, yeah, I remember them.
Those guys who refused to bow down to that huge, giant golden statue.
Talk about a test of faith.
What a story, right?
Yeah, but what gets me is you see that kind of pressure to conform everywhere, even today.
You think so?
We might not be facing a literal fiery furnace, but we all have those moments.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Where we're tempted to compromise what we believe in or just stay silent when we should speak up.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
So like going along with a joke that's offensive or not standing up when you see someone being treated unfairly.
Right, exactly.
Stuff like that.
Those things might seem small, but they can really add up.
Yeah, makes you think.
It's about that inner compass, that guides you even when everyone else seems to be going the other way.
And speaking of having what you need to handle those tricky situations, the episode goes on to talk about the parable of the 10 virgins.
Ah, yes, the bridesmaids.
Right.
Some were prepared and some, weren't. It uses this metaphor of oil to represent spiritual preparedness.
Okay.
5 wise virgins had enough to keep their lamps lit for the bridegroom, while 5 foolish ones ran out.
Wow, what an image.
Right.
Now, whether you take it literally or not, I think the message about being prepared, it's universal, really.
I agree.
Like having your oil ready for whatever life throws at you, like a job interview or a presentation or even just being there for a friend when they need you.
Yeah, you just never know when those moments are going to come.
So true.
So it's about having the resources and, the mindset you need to face them.
So what do you say are some of those resources? What does spiritual preparedness even mean if you're not, thinking about it religiously?
Well, I think some essentials are things like resilience,
Okay.
adaptability, mental strength, and even a sense of humor.
Oh, I like that.
It's about being able to roll with the punches, not letting life's ups and downs completely throw you off track.
It's like having that inner strength to, bend without breaking. Now, here's where it gets a little more, I don't know, maybe a little harder to grasp. The episode talks about the role of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
As a helper, a guide.
Now, if you're not familiar with that idea, you can kind of think of it as a metaphor for your own inner wisdom.
Intuition.
Yeah, exactly. That voice inside that nudges you in the right direction, even when you can't explain why.
It's like having that personal life coach in your head, whispering advice.
It's a good way to put it.
Helping you make choices that feel right.
Yeah, it's about trusting that inner compass.
We've covered so much already. It's amazing. We started with that, like, whoa, what if everything changes question? And now we're talking about authenticity, courage, being prepared, even trusting our gut feelings.
It all connects, doesn't it?
It really does. But before we jump into the next part of our deep dive, let's just pause for a second.
Okay.
Let it all sink in. What's sticking with you so far? What really stands out from this conversation?
You know, this whole thing about trusting your gut and like that inner voice, it makes me think of something the podcast host said about having a conversation with a historical figure.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they asked their listeners, like, if you could sit down with any person from history, who would it be and why?
That's a good one. Makes you think, huh? About who you'd want to learn from.
Totally. Who would you pick?
Oh, man. So many choices. But I think for me, it'd have to be uh, someone who had that mix of wisdom and, courage, maybe a little bit of a rebel. I'd want to chat with someone like Marie Curie.
Marie Curie. Wow, that's an amazing choice. What is it about her that, like, draws you to her?
Well, I mean, think about it. Her dedication to science, all those groundbreaking discoveries in a field where, men were calling the shots and how she handled all the adversity. She's just like the ultimate inspiration. Imagine talking to her about, breaking barriers and not giving up.
It's incredible when you consider the challenges she faced, not just in her career, but personally too. She was making these huge scientific leaps, but also battling for recognition in a world that, let's face it, wasn't exactly welcoming to women in science.
And that's what makes her story so powerful, even now. It's like she's showing us what's possible when you have that passion and you just keep pushing, even when everyone's doubting you.
Goes right back to that idea of courage we were talking about, right? That willingness to stand up for what you believe in, even when it's tough.
Totally. And her life shows how important it is to never stop learning, to keep pushing the limits of what we think is possible. She was always curious, always asking questions, and that's what led to those discoveries that, well, they changed the world.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What could we accomplish if we all had that kind of passion and drive to learn?
It's a powerful thought. And it brings us back to that message from the podcast episode about, living with intention, with purpose. Marie Curie's life, it's like the perfect example of what that can look like.
Absolutely. Her story is, well, it's a reminder that it's not just about the big achievements. It's about those small, everyday choices that shape who we are.
Speaking of which, thinking about her reminds me of, well, another historical figure who really embodies that curiosity, that drive to innovate, Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh, yes. Da Vinci, the ultimate Renaissance man.
Exactly. Painter, sculptor, scientist, inventor. I mean, the list goes on and on. He was always pushing the boundaries of, well, everything.
I know, right? Imagine having a conversation with him, picking his brain about his creative process.
Or his understanding of the human body, or those inventions that were like centuries ahead of their time.
It would be mind-blowing. It's amazing how these figures from the past, even though they lived in such different times, they still speak to us today.
Like they're sharing their wisdom, their inspiration for living a more, well, meaningful life.
It's almost like they're passing the torch, encouraging us to keep exploring, to keep asking questions, to keep creating.
Okay, time to come back to the present. We've covered a lot of ground, starting with that what if everything changes thought experiment, and now we're talking about these amazing stories of courage, resilience, and the pursuit of knowledge.
It's been quite the journey. Hopefully it's got our listener thinking.
Yeah, about their own values, what inspires them, how they can live more intentionally, starting today.
Exactly. It's about taking those insights and actually doing something with them, right?
It's not just about listening to a podcast or reading a book. It's about putting those ideas into action.
So I'm curious, what are some practical things our listener could do, even today, to start living more intentionally, with more purpose? What would you suggest?
That's a great question. Well, it doesn't have to be anything big. It could be as simple as, I don't know, taking 5 minutes every morning to think about your goals, or even just writing down like 3 things you're grateful for.
Those are good ones, yeah. Little things like that can really shift your perspective, help you start the day with more intention.
It's funny how we always think about those big, like life-changing moments, but sometimes it's the small, everyday stuff that really makes a difference, right?
I think so.
Like they say, how you spend your days is how you spend your life.
That's so true. And that's why it matters to be intentional about those little things, those choices we make every day. What are you saying yes to? What are you saying no to? Are you actually living by those things, those values that are important to you?
It's like taking a good look at your life and making sure it reflects, what truly matters. Now, before we wrap up, I want to go back to something the Sun Inside podcast really emphasized. That whole idea that living with intention shouldn't be about fear or pressure.
Oh, right. They made a really good point about that. Like, thinking about a major life event, whatever that might be for you, it shouldn't be about living in a state of, like, anxiety or dread.
Right, right.
It should be about embracing a life of, well, they said peace, purpose, and power.
Yeah, it's about letting go of all the things that, well, they just don't really matter in the grand scheme of things.
And focusing on what brings you real joy, real fulfillment.
Even if you're not coming at it from, like, a religious perspective, that idea really speaks to me. It's about living in line with what you believe in, with your values.
It's about creating a life that feels, authentic and meaningful. A life you're actually excited to wake up to every day.
And a life that, well, it has a positive impact on the world around you.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
I think that's a perfect place to wrap things up. Living with intention, with purpose, it's a choice we make every single day.
And it's a journey, not a destination, right?
Right.
It's about embracing all of it, learning from those experiences, and always trying to be the best version of ourselves.
Well said. So to our listener, as you go about your day, think about all this. What really spoke to you? What can you do, even if it's just a small step, to start living with more intention, more purpose?
Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress. It's about being real, being genuine, and making choices that, they line up with who you are, what you believe in.
And you never know, maybe by living with that kind of intentionality, we'll all be a little more, well, prepared for whatever comes next, whether it's a big life-changing event or just the next chapter in our own stories.
Beautifully put. It's about living a life that feels, true to yourself and makes a difference in the world.
And that's what the deep dive is all about. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of, well, living with purpose and intention. Until next time, keep diving deeper.